Welcome to Omega Bonda Stories. Let's begin.
The dress they put me in was not mine. It was ivory and heavy, and it smelled like borrowed wealth. My mother called it a blessing. My father called it necessary. Nobody asked if I could breathe. I knew a wedding was coming. I did not know my wedding was sold. I thought I was choosing a life. I thought I was escaping the way my family looked at me when the bills arrived. I was wrong. The contract sat in my father's safe. I found it when I went searching for my birth papers. I saw my name on the last page and the amount beside it. A neat number with too many zeros. Promise of debt erased. A promise that I would belong to a man I had never met. I am an Omega. In our world, that word can mean warmth and care. In my house, it meant leverage. My scent could open doors. My bond could seal deals. My body could stop men from fighting if it was placed between them like a flag. The family I was marrying into controlled docks and casinos and half the import licenses in the county. People called them businessmen in the daylight. At night, they whispered to the mafia. They said their heir was a cold alpha who never smiled. When my mother told me about him, I did not feel romance. I felt a wall built of fear and money. She said he would keep me safe. She did not say safe from what. She did not say safe for whom. The morning of the wedding, I sat by the window and watched a river that did not care about contracts. I pressed a scent suppressant under my jaw until my skin stung. I told myself to endure one day. If I survived the ceremony, maybe I could find a way to leave later. Then my little brother came into my room with red eyes. He said they are all acting strange. He said I heard father on the phone saying they paid in advance. He said paid for what? I wanted to lie to him. I could not. I told him the truth in pieces. I said they sold the wedding. I said they sold me. His face went blank like a light went out. He hugged me hard and whispered, I am sorry. The church was packed. The aisles were lined with men in dark suits who watched every guest like a threat. My family smiled too brightly. Their hands trembled when they held mine. They were not proud. They were relieved. I walked toward the altar on legs that felt like glass. The groom stood at the front. Tall, perfect posture, black hair slicked back. His expression was still as stone. When he looked at me, my instincts tightened and tried to fold. Not because he was cruel, because he was powerful. He did not reach for me. He did not whisper anything soft. He only looked at my face like he was reading a document. The priest began speaking. Words about devotion and family. My ears rang. I stared at the ring and thought about my name beside the zeros. When the priest asked if I would take him, my throat closed. I tried to speak. Nothing came. A murmur spread through the pews. Someone had entered the back of the church. The air changed. Not louder, heavier, clean and cold like winter. My instincts rose on their own. My Omega body recognized something it should not recognize. A pull, a warning, a thread. Every suit in the aisle turned at once. A man walked in alone. He wore a dark coat with rain on the shoulders. No jewelry, no smile, no visible mark. He moved with quiet authority like he did not need permission to stand in holy light. The groom stiffened for the first time. Not fear, calculation. The stranger stopped halfway down the aisle. His eyes found mine and held. In that regard, I felt something strange. Not desire. Being seen. As if he could tell I was not standing here by choice. He spoke one sentence. His voice was low and controlled. This wedding is mine. The church went silent. My heart punched against my ribs. My family faces are drained of color. The groom turned toward him slowly. Rival. The stranger did not look away. He took one more step forward. He said, I bought the contract. I revoke the sale. If a marriage happens today, it will be to me. My knees almost gave out. I did not know who he was. I only knew the room was suddenly full of danger, and the only calm place was the space around him. Then the groom lifted his hand, and the men in the aisle began to move. The men in the aisle took one step and stopped. Not because they feared the church. Because the stranger did not flinch. He stood still like he had already measured every outcome. The groom spoke in a voice that did not rise. He said, you do not belong here. He said this is an agreement between families. The stranger answered with the same calm. He said it was an agreement to sell an Omega. He said I own the paper now. He said you do not own him. My father stepped forward with shaking hands. He tried to smile. He said this is a misunderstanding. He said we did what we had to. The groom did not look at my father. His gaze stayed on the stranger. Two powers speaking over my head. Being the tool again. The stranger looked at my family. He said you will return the money. He said the debt is mine now. He said you will not touch him again. The groom stepped down from the altar. His expression stayed cold. He said if you want war you can have it. He said but you will not take what was promised. The stranger spoke softer. He said I do not want war. He said I want him safe. He said I will not ask for what he does not choose. Choosing hit me like a shock. The groom looked at me. He said do you want this? Felt like pressure wrapped in politeness. The stranger did not reach for me. He only waited. I thought of my brother. I thought of my family debt. I thought of being dragged into a cage with different walls. I could not find a clean answer. I could only find the least cruel door. I faced the stranger. I asked what happens if I say no. He said I will walk away. I will still pay your debt. I will still keep them from you. My lungs forgot how to work. No bargain. No demand. Just an offer with a cost he would carry. I stepped away from the altar and down toward him. Fear made my suppressant fail. My Omega scent lifted and I felt heads turn hungry. The stranger inhaled once and his jaw tightened. Then he looked away for a heartbeat like he was disciplining himself. That restraint made me feel safer, not smaller. I said I will not be sold again. I said if I marry you it will be my choice. He nodded once. He said then choose with your whole voice. I turned to my family and the groom. My voice shook but it carried. I said I do not consent to this marriage. I said I would choose to leave. The stranger placed the contract on the altar. He placed a marriage license beside it. My name is printed. His name is already there. A space waiting for a witness. He held out a pen and waited. My hand trembled as I signed. The priest stood stiff and pale. The groom watched like a stone. The stranger did not take my hand. He did not try to touch my skin. He only said, I will honor your choice. The priest spoke fast like he wanted it done. When it ended, the stranger guided me down the aisle with his body half a step ahead. The suits moved aside. Outside, the church rain fell hard. Car waited at the curb. He opened the door and stepped back, so I entered first. As the door closed, I saw my brother running out of the church. He was shouting my name. Then a man in a dark suit grabbed his arm and pulled him back inside. My body lurched toward the handle. I wanted to run back into that church and tear him free. My fingers shook too hard to grip. The stranger covered my hand with his for one breath. Not tight, not claiming, just stopping me from throwing myself into a trap. Then he pulled away. He met my eyes. He said, stay with me. He said, if you go in there, you give them 2 hostages. He took out a phone and spoke in short, clear lines. No anger, only instructions. When he ended the call, he said, your brother will be safe. The car began to move. Rain streaked the window. The church vanished behind us like a wound closing too fast. His phone lit again and his expression hardened into ice. I stared at the ring on my finger and felt the weight of it like a lock. I did not know his name in my mouth. I did not know if this marriage was a shield or a new cage. He looked out the window and then back at me. He said, you will not be punished for surviving. He said, you will have choices even if they hate you for it. The car turned toward the river roads and the city lights blurred in the rain. Then we heard the first siren behind us growing closer. The siren followed us and then peeled away like it only wanted to mark my fear. My chest stayed tight anyway. I kept looking back through the rain and expecting my family cars to appear. He sat beside me in the back seat. He did not touch. He did not crowd. His presence filled the space with quiet control. It was the kind of power that does not need to perform. We crossed a private bridge into a quiet district near the river. The car stopped at a building with no sign. 2 men opened the door and nodded to him. They did not stare at me. They treated me like someone worth protecting. He led me inside and walked half a step ahead. When I hesitated, he slowed. When I breathed too fast, he paused. Felt like he was giving me back my pace. The apartment was spare. Soft lamps. Clean surfaces. No photos. Felt like a place built for safety, not comfort. He pointed down a hall with 2 doors. Separate rooms. He made sure I saw it. He made sure I understood the distance was mine. My shoulders loosened and I hated how quickly my body trusted small respect. He poured water and set it on the counter. Then he opened a drawer and placed a medical suppressant beside it. No questions. No commentary. Just control offered back to me. I swallowed the suppressant with shaking hands. My scent retreated and my instincts calmed a little. He sat across the room in a chair, not on the couch. Distance. Deliberate. I asked why you did this. Why buy the contract? Why step into my wedding? He watched me for a moment like he was deciding how honest he could be. Then he said, because they would have used you to start a war. He said, because my rival wanted your bond more than he wanted peace. He said, because a person is not currency. The word person hit me harder than any threat. I swallowed and felt my eyes sting. I whispered, they took my brother. He stood at once. Not frantic. Focused. He typed on his phone and waited for one response. Then he looked at me. He said, your brother is alive. He said he is scared. He said, my people are moving him now. Relief broke through me like a crack in glass. I made a sound I did not mean to make. Tears came before I could stop them. I pressed my palms to my face and tried to breathe. I hated the weakness. I hated that relief feels like collapse. When I lowered my hands, a folded blanket waited on the arm of the couch. He must have placed it while my eyes were covered. Quiet care with no audience. I wrapped it around my shoulders. It smelled like clean laundry and nothing else. My body eased and I hated that I needed it. I said, I am sorry. Habit. A reflex from years of being blamed for existing. He shook his head once. He said, do not apologize for surviving. The sentence landed in my chest and stayed there. I asked what I should call you. He hesitated. Then he said his name. Simple. Humans. He did not add a title. He did not add a claim. I repeated it softly to make sure it was real. Something shifted in his eyes. Not softness. Recognition. Like my voice touched a place he keeps locked. My Omega instincts stirred with that same thread I felt in the church. A pull that did not feel like hunger. Felt like fate tapping on a door. He spoke again. He said, I will not claim you. He said, I will not touch you unless you ask. He said, this marriage can be paper only until you decide otherwise. My throat burned. Gentle power scared me more than cruelty because it asked me to trust. Trust is the most vulnerable thing an Omega can do. I whispered, what if my instincts choose you before my mind does? For the first time, his control cracked. Just a breath. His gaze dropped to my throat and then lifted again with discipline carved into his face. He started to speak. A knock sounded at the door. He moved between me and the hallway without thinking. Not aggressive. Protective. Certain. He looked back at me and lifted his hand with the smallest gesture. Stay behind me. Then he opened the door a fraction and the smell of my family flooded the room. I did not know it then and my heart was not ready to accept what my instincts were screaming, but something had already shifted between us and there was no going back. If you are feeling what I felt in that moment, then you understand why I need you to stay with me through this journey. Hit subscribe so you do not miss what happens when he finally breaks his silence, because I promise you it will shatter everything you thought you knew about us. The scent hit the room like smoke. My family had always smelled of polished wood and sharp anxiety. Behind it, I caught the colder scent of the groom's family. Their alphas carried control like a blade. He kept the door only a fraction open. His body blocked the view of me. His voice stayed low. He asked, what do you want? My father tried to speak first. His tone was pleading. He said, come home. He said, this has gone too far. He said, you are making enemies. The groom's voice followed from somewhere behind him. Calm and cutting. He said, you stole what was purchased. He said, give him back and we will end this clean. My stomach clenched. Ending this clean meant erasing me again. He did not move. He said, he is not an object. He said he chose to leave. He said the contract is void. My father said you do not understand. He said we cannot repay. He said they will destroy us. I stepped forward without thinking. My heart was pounding so hard I felt it in my throat. I said you already destroyed us. I said you sold me. Silence fell in the hallway. My father's breath hitched. For a moment he looked like a man who remembered I was his child. Then fear returned to his eyes and the memory vanished. He said we did it for the family. He said you are an Omega. You can survive a marriage. He said your brother cannot survive the consequences. The words sliced me open. They were using him again. He turned his head toward me just enough to meet my eyes. The question was there without words. Do you want to speak? Do you want to stay hidden? Do you want to run? He gave me the choice with his stillness. I stepped to his side so they could see me clearly. My knees shook. I kept my chin up. I said my brother is not your shield. I said if you brought him into this again, I will never forgive you. My father flinched. The groom's voice laughed softly. He said forgiveness does not matter. He said only power matters. He answered the groom without raising his voice. He said power is nothing without consent. He said you can leave now. The groom said I will take him anyway. He said your name is poison. He said every judge and every officer will believe you forced him. My stomach turned. Lies travel fast when they are convenient. He took out a folder and held it up in the crack of the door. A copy of the contract. A copy of the marriage license with witnesses. A receipt showing the transfer of debt paid in full. Then another page. A statement from the church security camera system time-stamped. Proof that I walked out on my own. My father made a broken sound. He said you cannot do this. He said we will be ruined. He said you ruined yourselves. He said your son will be safe. He said he is not in that church anymore. My father's face went white. He whispered where. He did not answer. He did not barter with my brother's location. His restraint felt like steel. My throat tightened with relief and rage. They had lied. They had not even kept my brother in the same place. They had only used the threat to control me. My father started to cry. He said, please. He said, come home and we will make it right. I wanted to believe him. I wanted the world where my mother held me because she loved me. That world was not real. It was a story we told ourselves to survive. I said I am married. I said I chose it. I said you do not get to undo my choice because it embarrasses you. The hallway went still. My father's eyes flicked to my ring. Pain crossed his face. Then anger returned like armor. The groom stepped closer into view. I saw him now, ice cold. He looked at my ring and his jaw flexed once. He said this marriage will not protect you. He said you do not know what you invited into your life. I looked at the man beside me, the Enigma, the one who offered me distance, the one who said the person. I felt my instincts stir and I forced myself to stay steady. I said I was invited to choose. I said I was invited to safety. A new voice cut in behind them. Authority. Police. An officer asked for the Enigma by name. He said there is a warrant for questioning regarding coercion and contract theft. He said come with us now. My breath stopped. He did not fight. He did not shout. He only reached behind him and touched my sleeve with the backs of his fingers. Contact like a promise. He said do not be afraid. He said you still have choices. Then he stepped into the hallway and let the officers take him away. The door closed and the hallway sounds faded. The apartment felt too quiet without him. I stood in the entry with my hands shaking and my ring suddenly heavy again. One of his men stepped into view and kept his gaze low. He said the officers are taking him to the station. He said the lawyer is already moving. He offered me a phone and said you can leave or you can stay. He said we will keep you safe either way. I asked about my brother. He nodded. He said he is safe. He said he will be here soon. A knock sounded later. My whole body tensed. Then I heard my brother's voice. Thin, shaking, alive. I opened the door and he ran into my arms. He clung to me like he had been holding his breath for hours. I held him and felt something inside me settle. He told me they grabbed him when he ran after me. He said they tried to keep him quiet. He said men in dark clothes arrived and pulled him away before anything worse could happen. He said nobody hurt him. I whispered you are safe until he finally fell asleep in the spare room. Near midnight, a lawyer arrived with a folder. She spoke softly and clearly. She said my family filed a report claiming I was coerced. She said the groom's family supported it. She said the goal was to separate me from the proof. She asked me one question. Did you choose the marriage? My throat tightened. I said yes. She placed papers in front of me. A statement, a request for a protective order, a complaint about the illegal sale. She collected copies of the contract and the payment receipt and the church camera timestamps. She said he will be released soon. When she left, I sat by the window and watched river lights tremble. I thought about the moment he touched my sleeve and said I still have choices. My phone buzzed once with a message from my mother. She said, come home and we will forget this. She said, you are breaking the family. I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I powered the phone off and set it face down. I realized I could love them and still refuse them. Love does not mean surrender. My brother woke and padded into the living room, rubbing his eyes. He asked if I was really married. His voice was small. I told him yes and no. I told him it was paper and protection and my choice. He nodded like he was learning a new rule for the world. He said, I am proud of you. The simple sentence broke something open in me and I had to turn away to breathe. The lock clicked near dawn. He stepped inside with a tired calm. No drama, only quiet control. My breath caught. My instincts surged and I forced myself to stay steady. It was not an attraction. It was the feeling of a shield returning. He stopped at a respectful distance. He asked, are you and your brother safe? I nodded. I said yes. He looked at my ring and then at my face. He said, you can annul the marriage tomorrow if you want. He said, you owe me nothing. The offer made my eyes sting. He was still giving me an exit. I whispered, why? He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, because I know what it is to be trapped. He said, I will never be the hand that closes a door on you. I held the ring between my fingers and thought of my brother asleep down the hall. I said, I do not know what my heart wants yet. He nodded like that was enough. He said, then we go slow. He said, the paper first. Trust second. Anything else only if you ask. The thread in my instincts tightened. Not a chain. Path. I said, I want to keep the marriage for now. I said, as protection. I said, as a chance to learn what it feels like to be chosen. His eyes softened by a fraction. He said, then I will honor that. He stepped back as if making room around me. He said, sleep. He said, tomorrow we build a life that belongs to you. For the first time, I believed patience could be enough to heal. That is how my world changed and how I found home in the last place I expected. If the story made you feel something deep and real, then I create these emotional worlds every single week for hearts like yours that crave connection that goes beyond words. Subscribe so you never miss the moment when two broken souls find each other in the darkness. Your support means everything, and it lets me keep bringing you stories that understand what you are searching for. Hit that subscribe button and let us feel everything together, because you deserve stories that see you.